Hey everybody, happy November 20th, 2017. Welcome to your somewhat late episode of Johnny Vlogs. I apologize for today's episode being late. I had a little bit of a computer problem. Luckily, HP helped me out and we were able to get that squared up. And I'm back up and running and here with all of you. Before we start today's topic, I have to thank a bunch of new Patreon supporters. Let's get right to that. Melanie, aka Mel Smiles, James D. Bennett, Elizabeth Schneider, Arthur Eldridge, Crystal Velasquez, and Judy Mickelson are all now pledged on Patreon. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. On top of that, Maggie edited her pledge, increased it. Thank you so much, Maggie. And I have to give a very big thank you to someone who sent money through PayPal to john@lordandarts.com, and that is Lena Seifert, who says, "Thank you so much for what you're doing, John. The world needs more people like you." I truly appreciate that, Lena, and I thank you guys because that support that you give me helps me do good things for other people and helps keep me here. So thank you so much for all of that. So today's topic, I've got a little bit, it's not really an update on the Deorr Kunz case, but I want to cover some recent developments around it. And then that's going to lead to today's question, which the ultimate question is, would I hire the private investigator, Philip Klein? And if you've watched my channel previously, you know I've been critical of Philip. Philip has reached out to me. We've spoken about one case in particular. He kind of let me in on some inside information in terms of that case. We talked about possibly collaborating in some way, but I can't really figure out how to make that work. And I got a bit of a backlash when I started talking about that on the channel. There were many people sending me links to information, websites where they're tracking all the things that Philip has been wrong about, or information that is basically going to prove that he's not really as effective as a private investigator as he might want us to believe, or something along those lines. So let's get through the updates on the Deorr stuff, and then I'll kind of tell you my point of view on it. First of all, there is a show called People Investigates, which is on the Investigation Discovery Network. They're in their second season, and recently they have released an episode on the Deorr Kunz case. And I just finished watching it. I didn't really want to do an Itchy Mysteries on this after I started watching it. Let me just tell you that I'm not the biggest fan of the format of that show. I don't want to go into it too much, but there wasn't really any super compelling new information that came out in that. There was a little bit more detail about discrepancies we already knew about, which are basically stories that the parents of Deorr have been telling and where those stories aren't lining up. There was a little bit more detail in that. They did get an interview with Deorr's grandfather, which has been a little bit of a hard thing for news organizations to do. So if you want to see him interviewed about the case, then I recommend that you can check out that episode. I rented it on Amazon for like $2 to see it. If you're a cable subscriber, you can go to investigationdiscovery.com and watch it for free right now. So, but like I said, it's not the best. There's not a ton of new information, and the main problem I have with how it's presented is they really play up to dramatic effect. I'm not a big fan of them having their editor-in-chief telling part of the story. I don't know why they couldn't find an actual expert to relay those parts of the story. They've got a staff writer that's telling a lot of the story. Once again, I don't know why they couldn't have found. I mean, they actually tapped into the expert, who's Nate Eaton, and they didn't use him nearly enough in the episode. He's the guy that writes locally for the area and has covered this case extensively, and I really think that he probably should have narrated the whole episode. But that's my personal feeling. So there's a little bit of an itchy mystery for you guys just right at the start of this episode. The main thing there was a couple of press releases that came out around the release of this episode, which are very interesting. And it is worth noting that Philip Klein is featured a lot in this episode. And the information that he gives seems pretty interesting, in particular about some of the details about where the parents' stories aren't really matching up. But before the episode came out, literally on the day that it was going to premiere, the sheriff's department for Lemhi County actually released a statement. So let's read just a little bit of their statement and see if we can try to get some sense. I mean, when I look at information like this, I'm always thinking, what is the intent of this information? And I can tell you a big chunk of this statement is just going over the basics of the case, then talking about the type of search effort that they had. And then it goes into this. Since our investigation began, some private investigators have also started separate investigations. It's imperative for the public to understand that the Lemhi, is it Lemhi? It might be Lemhi. I might be saying that wrong. County Sheriff's Office is the lead law enforcement agency in this case. Official statements and facts regarding the case will only come from the County Sheriff's Office. While there are several theories as to what may have happened to Deorr, none of these theories can be confirmed by our office. Our investigators continue to work diligently to explore all possibilities. We can't afford to close any doors or to let frustration drive the investigation in any single direction. Then they have some contact information, which I will put in the description box below, as well as my 2 previous episodes about Deorr's case, in case you want to look into that. If you might have some information, please use that contact info and send it in, because it is truly a heartbreaking case. I mean, you have a toddler that goes missing on a camping trip. And some people, obviously, not just Philip, but another private investigator that worked the case, who was featured more in the Missing 411 documentary that came out a few months ago, they're fairly clear that they think the parents did something to Deorr. So it's not just Philip that's saying that. Now, what I'm interested in here is in how this is worded. I think the main point of this press release is this statement. Some private investigators have also started separate investigations. And I believe they're doing that because they're trying to be clear that they are not connected to the investigations of Philip Klein or the other private investigator. And I think they're doing that because it seems like Philip Klein is actually being sued by the family at this point. So I think they're trying to make it extremely clear that, hey, Philip's doing his own thing. That's his own opinion. That hasn't to do with us. Even though some of their information might be cited in his opinion, that is a separate investigation. So the episode airs. At the end of the episode, Philip gives a little bit of a speech about that he thinks that this case will be solved, that his team is working on it literally right now, and that they're taking steps that he's fairly confident are going to solve the case. And then I think the day after the episode aired, actually, it might have been a couple days after the episode aired, this new article hit eastidahonews.com, which is, I believe that's the same publication that Nate Eaton works for, the expert that I mentioned earlier. Private investigator Philip Klein withdraws from Deorr Kunz case. And by the way, I'll have links to these articles that I'm citing in the description box below for you guys also. So this article goes on to say that Klein was originally hired by the Kunz family in early 2016 to investigate the disappearance of 2-year-old Deorr. And then it goes into quoting his official press release statement. And here it is. On Monday, November 13th, 2017, KIC Texas provided formal notice to Steve Penner, Lemhi County Sheriff, that we would be withdrawing from the Deorr Kunz case effective immediately. I would like to make the reasons for withdrawal very clear for the media and the general public. And then there's 3 bullet points. The first one is, we believe KIC Texas can no longer move this case forward. That is a serious turn from where he left at the end of that episode. And even if the episode aired within the past few days, admittedly, it might have been shot months ago, maybe many months ago. So keep that in mind. But something from the end of that episode to this point has pretty drastically changed, and I think he's going to tell us about it, but let's continue here. It is our firm belief that until truthfulness comes from the persons that we, as well as law enforcement, have named as suspects, there is nothing further to investigate. All evidence leads to the death of Deorr Kunz Jr. We do not believe a kidnapping or animal attack occurred, and all evidence supports this finding. Now there, I think he's making a statement that the county sheriffs are trying to avoid. He's basically saying, hey, look, we say they're suspects. At one point, someone in the county sheriff's department has said that they're suspects. So I believe that's why the sheriff's office is releasing their statement and saying, no, we have our own investigation. Philip has his investigation. We believe charges should be filed on the parents for child endangerment at a minimum. We publicly ask the district attorney of Lemhi County to strongly consider this charge. I know quite a bit about this case. Do I think that there is enough there for child endangerment charges on the parents? Maybe, especially after seeing the grandfather interviewed, and there is some discrepancy about the parents saying that they asked the grandfather to watch Deorr, and then the grandfather is saying, I don't recall them ever saying that. Just all of a sudden, his father was coming up the hill saying, where's Deorr? And I thought that he had gone with them. And as a matter of fact, that whole thing really makes me wonder if the parents are involved in this case, could it be that they were relying on the fact that they had their elderly grandfather there with them, that they could kind of spin this story on fairly easily? I'm sure it's pretty easy to get one over on grandpa who needs oxygen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week just to keep himself functioning. I don't know. It makes me wonder if they used him as a bit of a pawn in something that might be going on here. But Philip might have a point. They might actually be able to look at possibly some type of child endangerment charges there. Both the parents decided to go down to the river, go look at the river. Did either one of them really make sure that Deorr was being cared for? Was it smart for them to have relied on a man that's in that state who maybe if, Deorr went running off, could grandpa really chase him down? Would he even be physically capable of truly taking care of that boy? Or if some animal had come up to them, could he have protected Deorr? Was there any bad judgment in that decision? It's a really good question. Back to the statement. We have recently become aware that Vernal Deorr Kunz and his father, Dennis Kunz, have filed another lawsuit against our firm. This suit, as well as the misinformation campaign by certain social media trolls, appears to be a coordinated effort to impede the investigation. We are unable to continue our efforts in this case while simultaneously defending against a suit of this nature. As we have said, the truth is the ultimate defense. So that is what appears to be the main reason in this statement, for this statement coming out, in my eyes, is that Philip is basically saying, hey, look, we're being sued by this family. At this point, we have to focus on that, so we're not going to be able to continue the investigation. As a matter of fact, them not continuing the investigation might be that might be an attorney telling them, hey, look, it's best if you actually just get your hands out of this investigation completely at this point. If nothing else, just to show good faith that you're trying to do the right thing in this situation here. What's weird about all this is the official story is that Philip was hired for this investigation by the parents, eventually fired by them, and then supposedly rehired by someone else. And the question of who is this someone else might be important, especially if this is really going to trial, because originally I saw that it was just some anonymous donor. Then I saw these stories that it was changing more to it was an anonymous family member, someone that was actually part of the Kunz family. Or perhaps the family on Jessica's side, but someone that was related to them that was keeping him hired and investigating this case. That could be a very key point, especially in any lawsuit proceedings around this. I think because if it's a family member that's hired him and he's working on their behalf, then the information that he's kind of digging up and what he's doing with that information might be looked at a bit differently than it's some anonymous donor, it's some Joe Blow that lives in a separate state somewhere that's just funding this investigation because he's a concerned citizen or something along those lines. And it's kind of weird because, knowing a bit about Philip's personality, having some interaction with him directly, I'm truly surprised that he would drop this investigation. I would say that would be the last thing to happen. And that's why I think it might be something that's being prompted by a legal team. So now that's the kind of update, like I said, it's not really an update specifically about the case. It's more about politics around the case. Back to my initial question, my core question. It's something that I struggle with kind of regularly because I've seen both sides of the coin, I feel like, when it comes to Philip Klein. I started as a pretty harsh critic of his. I've gotten to know his work a little bit better, but I also know a little bit about his personality. I've seen him defend himself and his company directly to me very strongly. I've opened myself to his opinion about that, asked him many questions, got more feedback from him. I've seen the types of trolls that he's talking about. And as a matter of fact, the information that I got from them was not compelling enough for me to even do a video and say, hey, look, because honestly, if I had enough proof there where I could say this guy is a complete and total fraud, of course I'm going to say that, because I know my audience is people that are interested in cases like this, dealing with cases like this, and someday they might come across the decision, should I hire this guy or not? If someone came to me and asked that, I would make it contingent on a very critical aspect. Is it a nationally publicized case? If it's a nationally publicized case, personally, this is my personal opinion, I would not hire KIC. I would not hire Philip Klein. There is an issue with nationally publicized cases, and he's called it out. I've seen him talk about it many times. There are trolls. He literally has people looking to discredit him, attack him, prove that he is incorrect about these cases at every turn on these public national exposure level cases. Knowing some insight into his process, knowing, talking with him about one case in particular, the Thomas Brown case that is happening in Canadian in Texas, hearing some details that are not really publicly known that he shared with me, bouncing questions off of him and trying to give him different perspective on some of those facts. I can tell you, I do trust his investigative brain. If it was a non-national case, if it was truly a private matter, which he is, that's the weird thing. He's supposed to be a private investigator, but the way that I see the information about his work come out so publicly, because it's these national level cases, I think it's kind of unfair to him in a bit of a way, and that's why I wouldn't use him in that capacity. But in a true private investigation, something that wasn't going to be covered by all these publications all across our nation or all across the world, I actually might hire him, because I've looked at his information about the Thomas Brown case. I've looked into details there. I've talked to other family members that know about that information. I've confirmed some of that information, and the information was solid. And even considering the main thing that I still struggle with in terms of Philip Klein is how he addresses the trolls. If you are in the social media space as your job, like I am, you very quickly learn that conversing with trolls is pretty much a fruitless effort. I think for what most of us would consider trolls, if you tried to change the mind of every single one of them, you might hit 1 out of 20 that you're actually able to convert, to get them to understand your point of view or to move off the position of truly trolling you. That means that in a large percentage, your efforts are going to be wasted by even addressing the trolls. And we even saw this just in the video I did for Searchlight last week, where we interviewed Alexis Close. There are people that just want to comment on something that has absolutely nothing to do with the case at hand, but because she talked about some other aspect of something completely unrelated, that's what they're gonna hop on. And even in that case, you might say that that's not necessarily a full-blown troll, which is someone that is literally just going to come and attack you regardless of what's being said. You have to learn how to deal with them and to not focus on them so much. But if you're a private investigator, is that actually something that is good? Is it good that Philip is at least listening to and considering those opinions? Because what if there is something in those opinions or information that comes from one of those trolls as a source that could potentially crack a case? He's going to hear that information one way or another, because he's really keeping his ear to the ground. And I have to admit, I really struggle. I'm not on Facebook. I really don't use Facebook as a research tool much at all. I will point it out when I see it as a resource, especially for a missing persons case or something like that. But I don't get into the gossip or the rumor mills on each individual case like you can in a lot of these cases on Facebook. Philip seems to get in at that level. And is that good or bad? I think I struggle with, because I feel like most of the time it's bad. But what if that 1 out of every 20 cases, what if there's a little shred of good information in there that could help potentially find a Deorr Kunz or crack another case, solve a murder somewhere? Is it worth it at that point? There's something in me that says yes, that it is worth it at that point. But I still think that there is a struggle in terms of responding to these trolls. And if you recognize that there is a coordinated effort that's impeding the investigation, then just recognize it. You don't have to call it out. You don't have to try to fight it. You don't have to threaten them with lawsuits. You don't have to do any of that. I view that as almost wasted resource. One of the things I questioned when Philip initially contacted me is, why the heck is he paying attention to some YouTuber that is, you know, I think I had like 20,000 subscribers at that time or something. Why isn't he focusing on these cases? But in a way, I think he is focusing on those cases, because even through that conversation, we came to share information with each other and maybe helped change each other's perspective just a little bit. And maybe both of us got nudged a little bit closer to the truth. So that's it. Ultimately, for a public case, no. For a private case, a truly private case, yeah. Yeah, I do think that there is value there. I do think that he's got a good team. I do think that his people care about what they're doing. I just think that sometimes he gets caught up in the social media aspect, and I don't know if that's always to his benefit. I don't think it's actually to his benefit in terms of these national public cases. I know, kind of a complicated thing, but this is a very interesting space to be in. And it's weird because I think that he is trying to use the social media space and the major media space to help spread awareness to these cases. I think that there is good intentions in how he's trying to use media. But then there is also the question, which I asked right at the start, is there some part in him that is looking more for that attention than actually solving the cases? I don't think that there is a definitive flat out answer for that. I think that is something that really gets into the psychology of Philip Klein, and that, I'm sure, is a very thick book and not one that I have read completely, so I can't really answer all that. Anyway, that is your Johnny Vlogs for today. Before I let you guys go, I want to let you know that we're coming up on the holidays. This is a pretty busy time of year for me because my birthday is also in the middle of all this. This week, of course, is Thanksgiving here in the United States. Most people take Thursday or Friday off. I'm going to do the same. I have family that's coming in to spend time with us in our new home. So there will be no video on Thursday or Friday. For the rest of this week, the schedule is going to get changed up a little bit. We're going to do a Brain Scratch Searchlight update tomorrow. I really hope you guys will join me for that. It's on a case we've been talking about. It's going to be the third week that we've been looking into this case, the case of Kelvin Close. And basically we have some very tough things to discuss on tomorrow's video, but that is going to be for tomorrow. On Wednesday, we will do an itchy mystery, and then that'll be it for this week. We'll be back next week with a full slate of shows. And then of course, Christmas this year, I believe, is on a Monday, if I recall correctly. So no video on Monday. The following day will probably be Johnny Vlogs. So the schedule will get messed up on that week a little bit, but just know that on Christmas Day, I'm going to take the day off too. The following week, New Year's Day, is also on a Monday. I will take that day off as well. So for 2 weeks, you'll get 4 videos. Schedule might change up in terms of what shows happen on those weeks, but hope you're heading into a happy holiday season, and I will see you back here on the Lord and Arts channel tomorrow. Have a great day.